Hey everyone, you're listening to the Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be doing our first mock draft of the year. This is going to be a Dynasty League rookie draft. I know a lot of you guys are doing your rookie drafts after the NFL draft happened, so rookie drafts are the next thing on the schedule. This is a 3-round Superflex league. We're doing Superflex because it's easier to just move quarterbacks back out of it, but this allows us to talk about quarterbacks. If we don't do Superflex, then we're really going to end up getting the quarterback somewhere in the second round, and you guys are going to get a good representation of where you would take quarterbacks. So we're doing a Superflex league so that we are talking about at least 5 quarterbacks. This is going to be a 3-part series. We're going to be doing the first round today, and then we'll be doing the second round tomorrow and the third round the day after that. So take a look at the draft board. If you're listening to this 3 or 4 days down the road, you already know what video you need to go to find these guys. So we'll be talking about all of these rookies. So with that being said, today with me is Brandon Hickle. This is going to be his first show that he's on camera with me. He's the producer of the Fantasy Football Uptick. He's the guy behind the scenes. He's the one who deals with all the graphics and such. How are you doing today, Brandon?
Not bad, man.
Cool. So let's jump right in. We got in the first pick overall, which was kind of a surprise to me personally, but Jonathan Taylor went number 1. What did you think about that pick?
You know, I would have liked to see Edwards-Helaire go first there, but with the 2, you can't really go wrong. I think Jonathan Taylor is eventually going to take over the job there in Indy, and with that kind of line, you know, he's going to be good.
Yeah, no, I did a video already about Jonathan Taylor versus Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Definitely dynasty formats, which is what this draft is. I would totally take Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think he's going to be fantastic. He landed in the best spot there is. Coming into the draft, he wasn't my number 1 rookie, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as far as running backs that I ranked. I did have Jonathan Taylor over him. I actually had Clyde Edwards-Helaire as my number 3 rookie behind Cam Akers, who landed in L.A., which we'll talk about here in a second. But once you land in Kansas City, that is the dream location for basically anybody offensively, but for running back specifically, because Andy Reid knows how to use them, especially for his skill set of being able to be a reception hog. I'm seeing down the road he's going to end up having 2 or 3 years where he's got 100 receptions. So I really, really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He ended up going second, but you can't argue with Jonathan Taylor. That offensive line has got – they're 5 for 5 for great linemen, and they're going to be good for quite a while. So basically that whole time Jonathan Taylor's there, and they do run the ball more in Indy than they do in Kansas City. Now, I did talk about it a little bit, but I think that Marlon Mack is not quite as good as Jonathan Williams. So I think Jonathan Williams, at least this year, is kind of right there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I still would take him in a half-point PPR league or a PPR league, either one of those. And then Jonathan Taylor, I think he kind of takes the job from Marlon Mack this year. And I think he's got an easier path to it. I mean, even if you just listen to the news, Andy Reid and that coaching staff has already said Jonathan Williams is going to be the starter. That doesn't mean anything. I know it's coach talk, but if you go the other way, Frank Wright's already talking about this is going to be a 1-1 punch. It's not even 1-2 punch. It's just they've already put Jonathan Taylor as the number 1 along with Mack, and he's so much more talented that I don't think it's long before Jonathan Taylor kind of takes over. So then you came up as the number 3 pick. So talk to us a little bit about J.K. Dobbins and what were you thinking when you went J.K. Dobbins here?
Well, I saw the 2 first running backs go off the board, and here's another running back. I like the system. I like the team he landed on. He's going to fit really well in Baltimore. Mark Ingram, you're going to see him leave probably in 2021. And just a little stat on Dobbins here. In 2019, he had the 2nd most yards from the shotgun. And the Ravens last year, they had the player with the most, 2nd most, and 5th most yards from shotgun. So that system is going to fit real well with him.
Honestly, I struggled a lot with J.K. Dobbins and Cam Akers at the running back number 3 spot because while I like Cam Akers a little bit better as a running back, as a prospect, J.K. Dobbins, it's hard to argue with where he ended up. I mean, Baltimore Ravens are going to be a run-heavy offense. And if he just takes over Gus Edwards' work, he'll get over 130 touches next year. Mm-hmm. I think he's a little bit better in the passing game. So I think he was a fine pass blocker. So going forward, if Mark Ingram, like you're suggesting, leaves next year, I think Mark Ingram sticks around for 2 more years. But if he leaves next year, because they can save a lot of money by getting rid of him, J.K. Dobbins, if he becomes a workhorse back in that offense, it's going to be ridiculous. Now, what I'm afraid of, or what I think when I'm looking at these guys, is that I think Baltimore wants to do a 2 running back system. I mean, as dominant as Mark Ingram was last year, they still had Gus Edwards around. Gus Edwards is still there. They might still want to get Gus Edwards involved. This could be a 3-headed monster. So my only fear there is that he doesn't end up becoming the workhorse. But, I mean, consensus, people are saying that he's going to end up becoming the workhorse as soon as Mark Ingram's out of there. And if that's the case, he could be the number 3 pick of that year's draft, just based on the fact that Lamar Jackson puts so much pressure on the defense that it's going to open up running lanes for a guy like J.K. Dobbins, who's got that take it to the house speed and could really dominate in that kind of scenario. So the 4th pick comes up, and it's Joe Burrow, right? Joe Burrow in a Superflex league for me was right there with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I was debating between Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Joe Burrow. Now, I was drafting 5th, so as soon as I saw Dobbins come off the board, I was ecstatic because now I knew I was going to get one of the 2 quarterbacks. Joe Burrow is a steal at this spot, but I would argue that I would maybe take Joe Burrow 1 overall, and the reason for that is in these Superflex leagues, especially Dynasty, they got the longest careers. Quarterbacks typically have longer careers than receivers. They definitely have longer careers than running backs. Maybe they don't have the immediate impact that a running back does, but in a Superflex league, they do. Think about this. 12 teams, everybody should be trying to start 2 quarterbacks because for the most part, quarterbacks are going to be the guys that put up the most points. So if everybody's starting 2 quarterbacks, that's 24 right off the bat. That leaves 8 quarterbacks that are available for backups, right? Joe Burrow is going to be in the top 28. He's going to be an every week starter for whoever drafts him. And so getting Joe Burrow right here was huge. And let's say this guy has 2 quarterbacks better. Let's say he's got Matt Ryan and Patrick Mahomes, and now he drafts Joe Burrow. Well, Joe Burrow now at this point is either trade bait, or you can turn around and try to trade Matt Ryan for somebody who is really desperate at quarterback. Even in dynasty leagues, I think there's too much pressure on the future a lot of times when you can win now. And then also it's all about value because that position scarcity at quarterback in a 2 quarterback league, it's huge. And then you could turn around and trade that. Now, some leagues have certain rules where there's like a 3 quarterback limit or something like that. And that kind of changes things a little bit because, I mean, once you've hit that 3rd quarterback, then that makes it spread out a little bit more. But if there's no limits, I'm stashing quarterbacks because I know I can turn around and trade those. That value is not going to drop. Which brings it to my pick, which was Tua. And as you can see, I dressed accordingly. Tua from Hawaii, obviously he played at Alabama. But I love Tua in dynasty leagues because I don't know if they're going to redshirt him this year. But I do know that once he's back, he's got some traits that are going to translate well into the NFL. His ability to go through his progressions, his accuracy, his quick release, his presence in the pocket. Now, I did have Joe Burrow ranked over him, which I did a video on that where I kind of talk about Joe Burrow being a little bit better than Tua, who I would like in both redraft and dynasty. But that doesn't mean I don't like Tua. I definitely am high on Tua. I was ecstatic to get him at number 5 here. Next, we got Jerry Jeudy. So what do you think about that pick going 6? He was the first receiver off the board.
Well, I mean, most polished route runner coming out of the draft. You know, he's going to be a good compliment to Sutton. But, you know, I'm not totally sold on Drew Lock and the Denver offense of yet. But we'll see. You know, we'll see how that goes. Let's see if things can change in Denver.
Yeah. Actually, I'm kind of high on Drew Lock because I was actually going to talk about him when we got to pick 12 and Justin Herbert as a guy that maybe you would want to trade for in this scenario because a lot of people are like you where they're not really sold on Drew Lock because, I mean, he wasn't great last year. I mean, he did win 4 out of 5 games, but that was more of a team win as opposed to statistically he wasn't anything special, right? Yep. Whereas a guy like Justin Herbert, to me, I'm not sold on him. And again, he's going 12, so we're kind of jumping around a little bit, but the picks are there on the board. Justin Herbert is one of those guys that it seems like they climb in the draft every year. A guy like Mitch Trubisky, where he's got all the tangibles, not the intangibles, but the tangibles, the things that like faster, bigger, stronger, can throw the ball deep down the field, but doesn't really have the stuff on film that backs up what he will eventually be. Like right now, he's not ready. About a quarter of Justin Herbert's passes, I'm going to do a video on Justin Herbert, but it's somewhere around 25%, maybe a little bit less than that. But It's basically screen passes out of Oregon. The Oregon offense doesn't fit his strengths. His strengths is getting the ball deep down the field. And there was a lot of games, depending on what games you watched of Justin Herbert, a couple red flags. A, making bad decisions. B, it didn't seem like the coaching staff really trusted Justin Herbert if you just watched the game flow of a lot of those games. And the biggest game he had was against Colorado, which was one of the worst defenses in the NCAA last year. So he kind of pat-statted when he played the worst teams and kind of struggled when he played any teams with any kind of talent. So I just don't see it with Herbert. I get it. His draft really rose once he was at the combine throwing in shorts and a T-shirt. And it seems like every couple of years there's a guy like that, and he flies up the draft board, and then he just doesn't end up producing like a Paxton Lynch from a couple of years ago where the Broncos take him in the first round and he never really does anything. I'm just low on Justin Herbert. I am going to do more research on the guy, and I'm going to make a video, and I was going to compare him actually to Drew Lock, because even though Drew Lock's not a rookie, he's kind of being viewed as a rookie because last year was mostly a redshirt year. And from what I've initially seen, I would rather have a guy like Drew Lock, and maybe if you can trade the draft rights to Justin Herbert in a league like this and take a guy like Drew Lock, who's still pretty young and doesn't have the draft stock, but clearly the Broncos have surrounded him with a bunch of talent. Like this Judy pick I love, because you put him with Sutton, Judy, and we'll talk about KJ Hamler tomorrow, but the foundation for a 3-receiver set is there, and they're bringing in Pat Shurmur, who loves to run that 3-receiver set. So I really like I like Judy. I don't know that I like him there because I do have CeeDee Lamb ranked over him. And as you kind of indicated earlier, running backs is kind of where you want to go in these kind of drafts. I know it used to be receivers, but receivers bust so frequently, and running backs give you that immediate impact. And in every league, I'm so win now. Like my gravestone's going to read win now. Like, because I'm a win now kind of guy when it comes to fantasy sports. I don't remember the last time I went full rebuild. Just I can't get in the mentality. I'm so close all the time, right? So I definitely go with the running backs. Plus, right off the bat, people forget. Like after year one, they forget all the excitement of the first year as a rookie, and then that Cam Akers year where he's the lead workhorse back. Now you can trade Cam Akers because his value is up. And you can trade for some of those receivers whose values have dropped because they forgot that rookie hype is gone, like post-hype guys. So I definitely lean towards drafting running backs because I'm a trader, so I like to trade. I'll trade when the value is high, which brings us to the next guy, Cam Akers. And, again, I love this guy. He's on the L.A. Rams. The only issue with that is their offensive line's terrible, and they have a brutal playoff schedule in your fantasy playoffs and a brutal schedule just against run defenses throughout the year. I mean, they're in division with the San Francisco 49ers. That already hurts. And if I'm not mistaken, they play the Patriots and the Jets in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, which they were top 5, top 10 defenses last year against the run. And again, I did a video comparing Cam Akers to J.K. Dobbins. I liked Akers more. I think I'm still leading Akers, but almost every day I change my mind on which guy I like, because then I did the schedule video and realized just how brutal Cam Akers' schedule was, and then I kind of went back to Dobbins there. So next we got DeAndre Swift. What do you think about Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift? I know a lot of people have Swift over Akers and Dobbins in redraft leagues. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, it's definitely going to be a running back by committee. You know, how much of a split, I don't know yet. I'm saying I'm leaning towards more at the earlier of the year, 60-40. Kerryon Johnson taking the bulk of it, and maybe towards the second half of the season, maybe moving into that 50-50. But I think Kerryon Johnson is going to keep his role for the year at least.
Yeah, and Matt Patricia kind of has a history of doing that. If you remember the Garrett Blunt year, even though it was clear it was Kerryon Johnson's rookie year actually. You remember, Kerryon was clearly the better running back. Everybody in the whole planet knew Kerryon was a better running back, yet he kept rolling out the veteran, I mean, game after game after game, and it was just brutal. And Kerryon's not bad. Kerryon, in my opinion, might be better than DeAndre Swift. I didn't have DeAndre Swift ranked as high as all these guys. I actually had DeAndre Swift as the 5th running back on draft day. Most people had DeAndre Swift as the number 1 guy, but he was actually number 5 for me. I mean, it was between him and Dobbins, but he was definitely behind the other 3 of Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, and CEH. And J.K. Dobbins, I had him like right there with DeAndre Swift.
Right.
So for me, I don't actually think he's that much better than Kerryon. He was, of all these guys, the worst pass blocker of any of the guys going in this first round as far as running backs go, because he kind of dips his head, and I don't think they're going to let Matt Stafford sit there. He's not going to like that. Kerryon's a decent pass blocker, and he's a veteran. He's good. You don't lose anything in the pass game. I do think DeAndre Swift's probably going to be the third down back. It's probably going to be a 1-2, and then Swift being the third down back. So I agree with you. I think Kerryon actually gets more touches this year, or if not more touches, more snaps this year, assuming both of them stay relatively healthy. I think Kerryon ends up with more snaps even later into the year. But I do think Swift gets more involved the later the year goes. Early in the year, Kerryon's going to be a guy who's going to surprise a bunch of people with how much he's going to be on the field. I think this is actually might be one of those buy low scenarios for a guy like Kerryon, especially in dynasty leagues, because he's talented enough to get that second paycheck and get paid at a different team.
There you go.
So the next 3 picks were all receivers. It went CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, and Jalen Reagor back to back to back. So what were your thoughts on this? You think the order was right, or you think it kind of went off a little bit?
I think, as far as first-year production, I would probably rank Reagor a little higher than the other 2, maybe even Ruggs. But as far as dynasty goes, Lamb's right there. You're gonna want to get this guy. He's talented. He's got a lot of talent around him, but I think eventually he can push into that wide receiver 2 role. Elliott and Dak are still going to get theirs, but Lamb's right there. You got to grab him.
Yeah, I mean, Lamb is definitely was our number 1 receiver coming in. Like we both love Lamb coming out of Oklahoma. He was good the whole time he was in Oklahoma. He's got great hands. He's got a lot of stuff you can't necessarily teach. Like the route running, he's maybe not as good a route runner as Judy, but that's something that you can definitely teach once you get to the NFL level. He's fast enough to take the top off of defense. He's got great hands, and he's great after the catch. He actually led the NCAA as far as receivers go in broken tackles. Then you got a guy like Henry Ruggs, and honestly, this is basically the order I'd have these 3 guys in, because Henry Ruggs to me has got a lot of upside. I am really close between Ruggs and Jalen Reagor, however, being that this is dynasty, because I think Reagor's got the better quarterback. And I'm coming around to Reagor more and more the more tape I watch of him, because his stats in TCU don't really tell the story because the team around him was so terrible. Very similar to Cam Akers and how I kind of like Cam Akers, even though his stats don't touch J.K. Dobbins or Jonathan Taylor, just based on the fact that he was talented, but just talent around him was so terrible. I do think Jalen Reagor could have a bigger career than Henry Ruggs, but I love the idea of the first year. I think Henry Ruggs is it's going to be more involved, even though a lot of people like the Eagles. There is a lot of people there in Philly that people aren't talking about, like Alshon Jeffrey. I know he's supposed to be hurt, but he should be there by the end of the year, around your fantasy playoff time. And then you got guys like Deshaun Jackson, and they traded for Marquise Goodwin. These guys are going to see the field. Plus, they like to run 2 tight end sets. So you're like, oh, well, he can be the slot. They don't run out of the slot very often. They don't have a 3 receiver set. They have 2 amazing tight ends. Of course, they're going to run the 2 tight ends out there. So I really think that he's going to have a hard time not just seeing the field, but fighting for targets. Whereas in Henry Ruggs' scenario, he's going to be the best receiver day 1. He's going to be the guy that John Gruden is trying to get the ball to, and he has a history of getting his number 1 receivers involved with the passing game, not so much since he's been to Oakland this time around, but in his past 11 seasons when he was between the Oakland Raiders and the Bucs, he basically would have a 1,000-yard receiver every single year. And then you got CeeDee Lamb, and I think the Cowboys run 3 receiver sets so frequently that he's going to end up seeing the field more than a guy like Jalen Reagor, just based on the fact that that's going to be their primary spot. I mean, last year, he still got the targets from Cobb and Witten out there. He could still approach 100 targets, even in his rookie year, as the 3rd option. And I think that eventually down the road, he's going to end up becoming higher on that hierarchy, whether it's first option or second option. He will eventually climb that hierarchy, and while he is developing, he'll still be running out of the slot. or he can run out of the X or the Z. The thing is, Dallas has got 3 receivers who can basically do it all. So I really like Lamb there. Lamb's going to be my number 1 choice. The only thing that gives Henry Ruggs the edge over Rieger for me is not his long-term value. I mean, this is dynasty, but remember, I lean my most valuable year is that first year. The first year, can you help me this year? And I think Henry Ruggs has a bigger year 1. I think Jalen Rieger probably has the better career, but if I'm doing dynasty, I would rather have Henry Ruggs year 1 because he's going to be more involved in the offense this year, and I'd rather have Jalen Rieger career-wise based on the fact that I think Carson Wentz is so good. He's going to be a dominant receiver. If he's Carson Wentz number 1 receiver for the majority of Carson Wentz's career, he's going to be dominant. And it just depends on how much you value this year versus the career, because I think Ruggs will be close, but Derek Carr is not the kind of quarterback that Carson Wentz is. It's just not even close. And then Justin Herbert, we already kind of talked about him. Like I said, I would trade at this spot, but in a 2 quarterback or in a super flex league, you got to take Justin Herbert. He's going to get an opportunity. And like I said, 28 of those quarterbacks are probably going to be starting every week. You want one of the backups. I would trade this guy when his value is at its highest, but I would not pass on him here. I think he was the right draft pick. I might have even taken him even higher, despite the fact that I don't actually like Herbert. I might have taken him higher just because in a 2 quarterback type leagues, quarterbacks are so valuable that you can always trade him or flip him for somebody you really, really like. But that's it for the first round. Do you have anything else to add, Brandon?
That's it.
Well, it looks like we lost Brandon. That's it for today's show. We really appreciate everybody who tuned in. We're really doing our best to put as many videos out there as we can during this whole coronavirus thing. If there's a player comparison out there that you want to see, let us know in the comments, and we'll do our best to put that video out there for you guys. Once again, thanks for listening. We love you guys. Till next time. See ya.